And now we will hear from the Agency of Natural Resources, Jaron Borg, on stream permitting during flood response and recovery. Jason, you have the floor.
Thank you, Emily. I'm Jaron Borg with Vermont Stream Alterations Program. I'm here to talk a little bit about stream alteration permitting and technical services during flood response and recovery. Next slide. So because of the timing and the title of today's workshop, I do want to touch a little bit upon management of ice jams. While ice is not considered an in-stream material and regulated under stream alteration permitting, we do react to them and provide technical assistance when they do occur. As the National Weather Service noted, ice jams frequently occur in similar locations. So if your town has a particular area that's known for ice jamming, it can be beneficial to know which contractors in your area have specialized equipment. Primarily, these long stick excavators can be helpful on small scale ice jams. But as we'll see, the scale of ice jams really can dwarf these machines. Next slide. So you need to be able to keep things in perspective. In both of these instances, we are looking at ice jams that span a number of miles and several million cubic yards of material. So in the instance of the Missisquoi River here on the left, it really is economically more feasible to move the infrastructure, the building in this case, adjacent to the ice jam rather than trying to mitigate the actual jamming of ice. Another thing I did want to touch upon in this photo on the right is while this ice jam seems pretty stable here, there's actually not a whole lot of flow going through it, and it's actually going through another field adjacent to the river. So access to get to some of these areas can be very difficult and should be taken into account during those emergency response periods. Next slide. Here's another one just demonstrating the scale of some of the projects that might result from ice jamming. This covered bridge in Woodstock is between 15 and 18 feet above water level. You see there on the left, and you can see on the right that almost all of that has been taken up by ice, and the river itself has shifted further right and is running through a field. So your ability to react and bring in equipment there can be severely limited, and finding better options for residents on the roadway to access as opposed to trying to excavate this material might be better efforts. Next slide. It also should be noted that not all ice jams result in inundation flooding like we saw in the previous slides. Sometimes they can reduce channel capacity and increase erosive forces on stream banks, as was the case here, or the ice itself can act as abrasive and remove material. In this instance, the town has gone in and done some emergency repair on a temporary basis to restore emergency services for individuals living on this roadway. In this case, work will need to be performed during the summer months to assure that it is more resilient than in its current state. It's a bit of a patch job. Next slide. So beyond ice jams, which is the topic of this, we do have flood threats during the spring, primarily associated with rain on snow events. So if you have a thunder shower in April, which was the case in 2019 with the tax day storm, you can have significant rises in water levels, and that will take out roadways. So in response to the flooding, we have several types of permits that the stream alteration section works with. Next slide. And these are the two. We're going to focus primarily on the protective measures, but it is worth noting that next flood measure permits are essentially a typical permit process in a condensed time frame. So design, contractor bid, and build the project is how that works, whereas emergency protective measures are actions that can be taken on by the town themselves to make sure that there's public safety is primary goal of these. So next slide. Emergency protective measures were developed in the aftermath of flooding in 2011, both in the Northwest adjacent to Lake Champlain and in response to Hurricane Irene, or Tropical Storm Irene, apologies. The emergency protective measures process can be summarized by this one slide. I realize there's a lot going on there, so I'm going to break it down a little further. Municipality recognizes there's a threat to public safety and can approve taking actions to address that threat and notifies A&R of the actions being taken. The regional river management engineer or their delegate then either says the town may proceed and take those actions, or that they need to get down there to assure that it's done properly. And then finally, because these are done in a hasty fashion, both the town and the agency will work together to make sure that the permanent repairs meet implementation standards, which we'll touch upon a little bit here as far as the different types of work. If we go to the next slide. And this one's going to disappear real quick. I apologize about that. So there are 4 types of projects. Oop, we can go to the next slide. It's a repeat for some reason. So there are 4 types of projects that are allowable. There's removal of flood deposits, stream bed and bank fills, a temporary protection of damaged infrastructure, and construction of temporary berms. So removal of flood deposits, essentially if a stream channel has been completely choked off by woody debris and sediment, material can be removed to restore capacity as necessary to alleviate any ongoing threats or damages. In the case of stream bed and bank fills, those may be installed as long as they are not encroaching upon the pre-flood cross-section of the stream, and material should be appropriately sized. If it's not, it will be a temporary basis until the appropriate size material can be installed. Installation or more importantly, temporary replacement of infrastructure, primarily crossing structures, is also allowable to maintain access for safety vehicles and maintain public safety. And then finally, temporary berms can be erected to protect infrastructure that is being damaged. However, those berms do need to be removed after the threat has lessened, and that can be a pretty big expense depending on the amount of work that is necessary. So we can go to the next slide here. And then finally, just to touch upon what municipalities might want to look for before they start authorizing work. In this instance, I just have 4 slides up here of damages that occurred as a result of a couple different floods. And apart from the roadway, the town might not want to participate in emergency protective actions because the flood has largely subsided. Really, the work that the town might want to take immediate action on is assuring that there is access for public safety for emergency services, and that would be restoration or restoring a 1-lane road in the 2 slides where there is road damage. Next slide. So finally, the Rivers program here is to assist you with any technical questions you may have regarding infrastructure conflicts with the river. We normally would have a location slide up here, but that was being redone. So, or a map up here. So if you note the website here, you can access all of the maps for our engineers, floodplain management, and stream scientists to help you with any technical needs.
Thank you so much, Jaron. What questions What questions do folks have for Jaron over at the Agency of Natural Resources Rivers Management? If you have a question, please type it into the chat or raise your hand. Okay, seeing none, if anyone can't do those and would like to ask a question, please unmute yourself at this time. Okay.
Sorry,
Well,
sorry about that. I
go ahead.
apologize. I couldn't type fast enough. So like, really from my view of this, so being a like basically emergency preparedness specialist. So really the main function is for like, I guess it's the roadways is to make sure that we can get some sort of public service right out, whether it's like basically EMS or fire. So ultimately the roads are going to get fixed, right? Is kind of what I'm taking from this and stuff like that, to always make sure there's access points.
Yes, yeah, that is correct. That would be the town's priority, would be to assure that public safety and emergency services can get through. That isn't to say that some of these sites might benefit from doing all of the work immediately. Hopefully, we've had enough interactions with construction companies in your area that would be foreseeable, or there's not a significant amount of damage so that they can be addressed properly one by one, rather than just doing a temporary bit of work to restore emergency services. But that should be the general priority. Oh, it looks like John's got a question here too.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Nathan. And now I believe it is actually John Goff who has a question. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, Jaron, sure. I just had a real quick question. Is there a difference on how you address these rivers on roadways, if it's a state or federal highway versus a local road? Is the process the same, or is it driven by the state or something if it's a state level highway versus the town? I'm just curious, as as somebody that deals with hydrology and hydrological assistance.
Yes, that's a great question. Primarily, we will be working with towns for response and recovery. VTrans has district technicians that we do work with, technical capacity as well. However, statutorily, they are regulated differently than municipalities and private citizens.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions for Jaron from the Agency of Natural Resources River Program? Okay, hearing none. Thank you so much, Jaron.